this is part of a series of special events that we run every quarter. Every time we bring in a special guest. And thinking about our guest today, I think we went above and beyond. I'm super excited because today we're going to bring you behind the scenes of working at the White House from a speech writing perspective. But before we go there, I see lots of familiar faces, but for those of you who don't know me, just a super quick intro from my side. Now, my name is Andrea Pacini. I'm the head of a company called Ideas on Stage UK. We've got Phil Wakenell from our office in Paris, and we specialize in working with business owners, leaders, and teams who want to become more confident, effective, impactful presenters. In the last 15 years, we've worked with thousands of clients around the world, including business leaders from organizations like eBay, Spotify, Salesforce, Amazon, and over 500 TEDx speakers. Our mission is to stop great ideas from failing just because of the way they are presented. And our vision is to help hundreds of thousands of business leaders inspire their audiences, increase their influence, and make a positive impact in the world. And that's it. Enough about me. Just a couple of house rules here. Now, the best thing we can do to have a good connection with each other is for you to keep the webcam on. Now, you don't have to, but if you feel like it, that would be great. And also, feel free to use the chat anytime. Any questions you have or comments, reflections, I'd love for this to be a dynamic dialogue. Let's keep it as interactive as possible. Feel free to use the chat. And now what we'll do today is this. We're going to have a brief opener from our guest. Then we do a bit of a live interview. As part of that, you will have the opportunity to ask questions directly to our guest. We do it via the chat. So any question you have, please type it in the chat, and then I'm going to take your questions for our guest. And then we're going to wrap it up. Very simple. And as always, for these special events that we run, we are always supported by some fantastic organizations. We are going to include the links in the chat. Check them out. This time we've got Startups Magazine, Growth Builders, Investors, Startup Grind, London, Everyday People, great organizations. The links are in the chat. Also, stay tuned because at the end, I'll give you access to a virtual goodie bag with lots of free resources, promotions, and advice from our supporting partners and from a guest as well. And our guest today is an award-winning author, speaker, and trainer whose presentations and workshops empower audiences with the communication skills he learned as one of President Barack Obama's longest serving White House speechwriters, lessons that then he also shared in his fantastic book, best-selling book, Say It Well. Now, the book was selected as a must-read book by the Next Big Idea Club, one of the best business books of 2024 and the best marketing and communications book of the year. Now, he worked as a speechwriter for Obama for 8 years, and in that time, he helped craft roughly 500 speeches on anything from global security and international economics to US foreign and defense policy, entrepreneurship, development, and human rights. And today, he uses the experience to help leaders in politics, business, NGOs, philanthropy, and entertainment inspire audiences around the world. I'm beyond excited for the opportunity that we have today, and I know you're going to learn a lot today. So please welcome Terry Zuplat. Terry, thank you very much again for your time, for accepting my invite. We had a conversation already on our podcast. It's great to see you again. How are you?
Great. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much. We had a wonderful conversation on the podcast. Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it. Thank you for everybody for joining. Looks like we've got about 70, 80 folks from all over the world, and I know a lot of you are joining from much later time zones than I am. So we'll get right to it, try to keep on schedule. I'm just going to basically do a quick 15-minute opener, and then really what we're going to use most of the time here to have a conversation that I hopefully answers the questions that you have. So, of course, immediately my clicker doesn't work, but let's see. Here we go. We're going to kind of move forward. There we go. So as Andre was saying, came out with the book actually a year ago this week. So this week is the birthday week for the book, and I appreciate a lot of you on the Zoom here might already have it. Hopefully you found it useful. That's really all I want to do is write a book that was useful for people in your work, in your life, as you communicate with family, friends, colleagues, neighbors, fellow citizens. And it's been a year. And it's also it's available in more than 150 50 countries. So wherever you are, hopefully you can get it. It's being translated into 8 different languages or so. So far, it's out in German, Portuguese, Chinese, and Korean, none of which I speak. The publishers keep sending me the text for approval, and I don't speak any of these languages. So my answer is always yes. But if you don't want to read it in English, you can always read it in some other languages as well. Just again, a little housekeeping up front. Andrea and I connected first on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I think it's like the last nice place on the internet. You know, it's one place where people aren't yelling and screaming at each other and they're actually supporting one another. So I try to use it as a learning tool as well. I try to share tips and strategies for public speaking every single day, or as often as I can. So if we're not already connected on LinkedIn, please send me an invite. I'd love to be connected. I try to use it in a positive way to put out some goodness into the world. And also, none of what I'm about to share with you is classified. So if you want to take a picture, a screenshot, whatever, feel free to do so. Feel free to share it, tag me, whatever. There's nothing. People often ask, and I just want you to know you're free to do anything you want with this. I just want it to be useful for you and your networks. So just very quickly, sort of who I am and how I got here. I've been in the communication speechwriting world for nearly 30 years now. I've worked with leaders in government and business and philanthropy and NGOs. And for 8 years, I was a speechwriter for President Obama, mostly focused on foreign policy. So I've had a chance to come with him to many of your countries. And in the second term, I was also the deputy director of speechwriting. So a challenge that many of you probably face in your organizations is keeping everybody, all the speakers, literally on the same page, not just for our case, the White House, but across government. And that can be something we talk about if you'd like. It's a huge challenge. How you become a presidential speechwriter in the first place? I'd always loved politics, loved government. Came to Washington D.C. for college. My senior year, had an incredible opportunity. Got to become an intern at the White House. Although as an intern, you're pretty low on the totem pole. That's about it. That's me in the top left corner in the red circle. That is as close as I ever got to the president. They didn't let me anywhere near him. It was Bill Clinton at the time. But what was interesting is I was assigned to the speechwriting office, and specifically the foreign policy speechwriters. And so 22 years old, had a front row seat on how these speechwriters were helping the leader of an organization communicate to audiences all over the world. They were busy most of the time on really important speeches, but every once in a while they let us take a crack at something, us interns. And so one day the president was going to a newly independent Ukraine. He had to give a speech to our U.S. embassy staff. These were not prestigious or historic remarks. As you can see, they were held in the gymnasium. So a perfect speech to give to the intern. But I think, I don't even know if the people who were there remember this speech, but I do. You know, I was 22 years old and I got to help a president of the United States communicate our vision and values overseas. And to this day, I still have the copy of the presidential schedule that day with my name on it. It was the first time I thought maybe this could be a way that I could serve the country. Got my first speechwriting job a few years later for our Secretary of Defense. I share this photo because you know, we all see the movies, Top Gun. Everybody's handsome and sexy. But in fact, the reality is you put on the gear, this is what you look like. Neither handsome nor sexy. But it was a chance to travel with the secretary all over the world for 4 years, speaking to our armed forces, their families, our veterans, our allies, our adversaries. I like to point out who the Secretary of Defense was at the time. For those of you familiar with American politics, his name was Bill Cohen. He was a senator from our state of Maine, and he was a Republican. And he did something pretty rare in American politics. He crossed the aisle and he served in the administration of another party. So I show this picture because this is me as a young Democrat working for my boss, a Republican, who was serving in the administration of the other party, a Democrat. And to me, this is how government should work. This is how foreign policy and national security work. I show this picture to young people. I want them to know that here in the United States, there was such a time, and I pray that there will be such a time again when we can work together, where we put our country first before party. A few years after that, I was a volunteer speechwriter at our Democratic convention in Boston. I was one of the people below, hunkered over a laptop, pounding out speeches all day for a week. And we heard a rumor going around that the keynote speaker was pretty good. Somebody had heard him practicing, so we made a point to be out there on the convention floor. And out came this guy that we had never heard of before, a state senator from the state of Illinois with a very unusual name, Barack Hussein Obama. And 17 minutes later, people were talking about him as potentially a future president. I talk about that speech a lot in this book because I think it's a great reminder, politics aside, no matter what your views of him are, if you can get up and give a presentation that's only 15, 16, 17 minutes long that can transform how your audience sees you or your organization, that's a speech that we can all learn from, again, regardless of our politics. 4 years later, I was a speechwriter again at the convention, got to know his speech, that keynote speaker became the nominee, got to know his speechwriters a little bit. I helped out a little bit on the campaign. And then when he won, they reached out and said, would you like to be a part of our team? And so the answer was hell yes. It's every speechwriter's dream to write for a president, to be able to write for someone like Barack Obama, was going to the next level. They made me take a test, which is pretty common in the speechwriting world. Can you imagine all your life's dreams and ambitions come down to one writing test? But I guess I passed because a few months after he took office, I was in the White House. I was in the West Wing. And this happened to just be the White House photographer captured the moment I met him for the first time. We were in the West Wing in the office of David Axelrod, one of his advisors. Any of you who are fans of Pod Save America, that's Jon Favreau down on the right before when he had no hair. But I had just written my first speech for the president, and we were meeting to talk about the speeches, and in he walked, and he looked around and said, "Where's the new guy?" And he wanted to thank me for writing the speech, which I thought was just a class move, a class act. People always ask me, what was he like to work with behind the scenes? Well, that was what he was like. He took a moment out of his incredibly busy day to pop in, say hello, and thank the new speechwriter. I mean, I lived off that compliment for years, and I'm telling it to you today. Obviously, it meant the world to me, and so I was blessed to work with a boss who treated us all with dignity and respect. I hope all of you if you are a boss, I hope you're that kind of boss. If you have a boss, I hope you have that kind of boss. And if you don't, maybe you should go looking for a place where you will get treated like that. So we were all very blessed. I was lucky to be part of an incredible team of speechwriters. This is our team at the end of the administration, both speechwriters for the president and the first lady. Very quickly, a story of what he's holding there. We all have verbal tics. You do, I do. If you don't think you have a verbal tic, go ask your partner, your wife, your husband, your colleagues. They will tell you. We all know each other's verbal tics. Well, one of the president's verbal tics was he loved to reject notions. So we would never write this in the speech, but he would often just ad lib. We need to reject the notion that climate change can't be solved. We need to reject the notion that the economy can't work for everybody. He was a bit of a straw man, but it was something he did. So for his birthday, as a gag gift, someone from our office did a keyword search and found all the notions that he had rejected in 8 years of his presidency, put them on a board. If you look really close, it says all the president's notions there. So that was our little thank you to the boss. We thought it was hysterical. He sort of chuckled politely. None of us like having our verbal tics pointed out. Sorry, during those 8 years, we wrote 3,477 speeches for the president. That's everything from gigantic State of the Unions all the way down to short little statements when someone passes away. Every night we'd send them up to him in a folder like this. Every morning we get his edits back. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. During those 8 years, I was fortunate, because I was a foreign policy speechwriter, to join the president on visits to more than 40 countries, a lot of which you're joining from today. And I get that different people in different places have different styles of communication. Germans speak differently than the French. Europeans speak differently than Africans and folks in Brazil, and so on and so forth. I get that. But at the same time, I was very lucky to be able to go on these trips with the president and sit there and watch how he communicated with people all over the world as an American. And so I think there are still some fundamental truths and fundamental ways that we connect and communicate with each other as human beings that transcend borders, that transcend culture. I share a lot of those stories in the book, so you'll see stories from his visits to your countries as well. It could be terrifying to travel with the president. This is Athens, Greece. The audience of thousands of people were in their chairs. The president was backstage ready to give the speech. The speech was written. Unfortunately, the speech was trapped on my computer with no Wi-Fi. So those of you, we all struggle with Wi-Fi connectivity. We did it at the White House as well. That's the look of a speechwriter. Pretty sure that I'm going to lose my job. I did not lose my job that day, holding up a whole speech. I think we only had 2 months left in the presidency, so I think I just wasn't worth the paperwork at that point. But this is the reality of traveling with the president. We would get edits from him at all times of day, morning, noon, and night. This is first thing in the morning before his first meeting of the day. I think we were in Poland at the time. I had been up all night working on a speech. They called me down to get his edits. I begged them not to send me in because I wasn't dressed appropriately. I hadn't shaved, hadn't showered. I was kind of a mess. Thing about working at the White House is there's always a White House photographer to capture you in your least professional moments, as he did here. But sometimes the president liked to sit right next to us while we made our edits. This is right outside the Oval Office. There was no time to run back to our own personal office. And he would sit there and just sort of every 30 seconds or so check to see whether we were done after making hundreds of edits. None of us like it when our boss leans over our shoulder, breathes down our neck, tells us how to do our job. It happened at the White House too. It happened quite often, actually. It happened pretty frequently. He was engaged. He wanted to get it right. This next photo is not my proudest moment as a speechwriter, but I do share it because I think it's important. If we weren't moving quick enough, or if I just sort of wasn't getting what he was saying, he'd kick us out, sit down himself, and write the speech himself. So again, there's the speechwriter in the back not writing the speech, but there's the leader of the organization caring deeply about what he wanted to say, writing out the words himself. And that's a theme that I come back to in the book as well, about to having to take ownership. If you lead an organization, don't just read whatever your staff gives you. Be involved, be engaged. We'd get all sorts of edits from him. Sometimes the edits were very light. This is a light version, just a few edits here and there. Sometimes his edits were a little bit more significant. It would take us hours to get through edits like this. Again, not great as a speechwriter, but here's someone who's trying to get everything just right. And then again, it was a big idea, we sent the speech up, he's reading it at night, feels we've missed some big idea. He'd just break out his yellow legal pad and write the speech himself. Again, now we didn't want him doing this every single night. It would bring the government to a halt. But for the ones he really cared about, and this is another lesson that I share in the book, I hear a lot of people say, oh, I just like to wing it. I don't like to write things out. I think it's really important to write a presentation out. We have a saying in speech, if you haven't written it out, you haven't thought it out. There's so many reasons to write out a speech, write out a presentation, forces you to confront your arguments, their strengths, their weaknesses. We can talk about that if you want. So I tried to put a lot of these experiences, a lot of these lessons into the book. Every book is built around a core idea. And I did this for several reasons. I did this because public speaking is hard. It's hard to keep our audiences engaged. Of all ages. So even when you're the president of the United States, this poor little kid literally fell asleep while the president was talking. When they first told him, hey, you're going to the White House, he was probably super excited. Then the reality was they probably woke him up at 4 a.m, put him on a bus, put him in a suit, made him sit for hours. Even Barack Obama couldn't keep this kid awake. So maybe you've been there. I certainly have been there. It can be a little bit discouraging when you see someone in the back, starting to nod off, but it happens to the best of us. So a lot of the books are ways to just keep your audiences engaged throughout your presentation. And one of the things I'm thrilled about, for those of you who've read it, you know this, for those of you who don't, but a lot of the book are my conversations with the president in moments like this, where we're up in the Oval Office, getting his guidance on speeches that were coming up, what he wanted to do. And so with his permission, with the permission of his office, I'm sharing a lot of those stories and conversations. So I hope that as you read this book, you feel that you're not just having a conversation with me, you're having a conversation with Barack Obama about writing and about rhetoric and about presentations. And one of the stories that he told me in moments like that goes back to that first big speech he ever gave in 2004. And I show this. He looks like he's 10 years old. He's actually 15. No, he's 42 years old, but he looks, gosh, he looks so young. Anyways, that's the first time that most of us ever heard him speak. And immediately a phrase started circulating that I came to hate, which was, wow, what a naturally gifted speaker he is. Naturally gifted. I thought, what a disservice. I'm pretty sure the guy didn't just pop out of the womb that way. And so, one of the stories that I share in the book is a story that he told me that I had never heard before. Was when he was a young community organizer in Chicago. He had been giving a lot of speeches, and he had to give one particular speech one day that he hadn't practiced, he hadn't written down. He decided to just wing it. And guess what? It did not go well. He told me, and I tell the story in the book, how he lost his train of thought. He started stammering. He started sweating. He was embarrassed. He felt stupid. And I think so much for the naturally gifted speaker. So he's in his mid 20s. And I put that in there because I want everybody to know, but especially young people, those of you who have children or young professionals. I wrote this book for everybody, especially them. I want them to know that nobody's perfect, and this is something that everyone struggles with at one time or another, including Barack Obama. So my next question, of course, was how did you go from that 20-something-year-old who struggled to give a speech that day to that 42-year-old who gave a speech for the ages? He walked me through all the different ways that he worked to improve, and I have them in the book. And again, I want people, especially young people, to know you can get better at this. This is a skill, and like anything, you can practice and get better. The last thing before we go to question and answers, one of the things that I talk about in the book is what makes speeches and presentations different from all sorts of other forms of communication. And one of them is that speeches and presentations are meant to be heard. They're meant to be experienced, right? They're not meant to be read quietly like the morning newspaper or a book. And so one of the things that I've encouraged people to do is I talk a lot about a lot of Obama speeches in this book, but I also want people to know that there's amazing people out there every day giving remarkable speeches. A lot of them have gone viral. And I refer to them and I tell their story. Every chapter has a story, not just of a Barack Obama speech using that lesson, but of just an ordinary person like us. And so on my website, I have a special page dedicated to all the speeches that I mention in the book, whether they're an Obama speech or a speech by someone like us. I want you to be able to, as you read the book, take a moment, pause, go find the speech, watch it, listen to it, experience it the way it was meant to be experienced. And you can find those on my website, terryzuplat.com. I have a tab there called Say It Well Book, and it's organized by chapter. I want this to be an experience, and I want the book to be experiential so that you can watch and learn as you read. So again, put it all in the book. I hope those of you have it. Enjoy it. If we're not already connected on LinkedIn, please send me an invitation to connect. I'd love to be connected with you. Feel free to share anything that I've have already shown you or we're going to talk about. Feel free to share it. And also, too, I try to bring this book alive with in my keynotes and workshops. I travel around the country, around the world doing this, hoping to come to Europe again in 2026. So if you follow along, if you or your organization are ever interested in sort of bringing these lessons alive, I'd love to bring it to your organization. And again, I hope you have enjoyed the book. I'll talk about more of it today with you, and really looking forward to an incredible discussion with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Terry. And there's something that I shared with you in when I had an opportunity a few months ago to have a chat with you on the podcast, and it's something that I want to repeat here in front of everyone. Now, your book, again, here, I have it here, is a very unique book. Now, as a public speaking coach, I'm in love with speech writing, presenting, public speaking. So over the years, I read many books on the subject. And yours is definitely one of the most powerful ones, if not the most powerful one. And also, now in the book, you talk about the idea of giving the talk that only you can give. And that book is a book that only you could write. And you've done it. That was great. And also, as I shared with you last time, as I was reading the book, more than once, it made me cry, which is which normally doesn't happen when you read a public speaking book. So again, thank you very much
Sorry for making you cry. Well, you
for
felt
making me.
something. And I appreciate that because I mean we can talk about that. That I think great presentations, great speeches, great books should make you feel something. We're not just here to transmit data and information. We're here to create an experience between the speaker and the audience. In this case, we are the audience of a book, and so I appreciate that. That's one thing I think a lot of people just don't. Oh, I'm here to deliver a policy, a program, and they forget the humanity, they forget the heart, and we need more of that, not less.
Tell me more about this. You said that it should be an experience. Earlier in your opener, you said that a speech is meant to be experienced. And I know that, for example, as a speech writer, you when Obama then was delivering that a particular speech that you had worked on, instead of sitting and paying attention to Obama, which would be the, if you want, the logical thing to do for most speech writers, you prefer to experience the speech from a different perspective. You prefer to sit down and look at the audience instead. Why was that your preference?
Yeah, because we had, as speechwriters, we had spent days or weeks, sometimes months, imagining that moment, trying to create an experience, a moment for the president and that audience. And I wanted to see if it worked. Were they smiling when he said something, that should make them smile? Were they leaning in and listening when he was making an argument? Were they cheering? Were they laughing? I could go watch the video later, but that's only going to show Obama at the podium. I wanted to see their faces. I wanted to see what was resonating. Also, I wanted to see what he was seeing because again, you're as a speaker, you're seeing the audience, and we all, either they're falling asleep like the little boy, or you can tell they're engaged, that they're nodding along, they're paying attention. I wanted to know what was working. Do we do more of it next time? I want to know what wasn't working. Maybe don't do it. So yeah, I wanted to see whether they were having the experience that we wanted them to have.
Makes sense. And we already have several questions. One is from Loadaway. And the question is, well, first of all, he says, halfway into your book, really love it and must read for both beginners and more experienced speakers alike. The question is, what's up? And this is now, you mentioned, Terry, your list of speeches in your website. So this question is very much connected to that. He says, what is, apart from Obama speeches, is there one speech in particular that you recommend that's a perfect example of your theory?
About my theory, just theory
About
about
your ideas, yeah, a good because in your, again, in your website you've got lots of speeches.
art.
Is there one in particular that comes to mind that's a good example of the ideas that you talk about in your books?
So, at the end of the administration, the White House asked all of us speechwriters, say, what's your favorite speech, your personal favorite speech? And so each of us sort of said one. You can go Google online, Obama's speechwriter's favorite speech. I think we did a Medium post. And what's interesting is some of them are well known, but most of them were not, right? Most of them are the lesser well known speeches, but they meant the world to us. And so the speech that I nominated for that was the speech the president gave after the bombing of the Boston Marathon. Because I happen to I was born in Boston, grew up in Massachusetts, had tons of family and friends. That was a very personal event that happened. And I asked if I could help, if I could be the speechwriter to help work with the president on that, because I knew how important it would be to the people of the state that I'm from and that I love. And so I'd say just about everything I teach in the book is in that speech in one way or another. In particular, one of the techniques that I think the president used that we always use is, it's just write for one person, speak to one person. Don't, it can be overwhelming and intimidating to think, oh my God, I have to speak to 500 people or 1,000 people or 50 people. Sometimes it's easier just to think of one person and write the speech, the presentation for them. And because, it's much more personal, right? Because now you're thinking of a specific person. So all throughout that week, I was thinking of my family and friends back home, particularly my Uncle Dan, who was and I write about this in the book, very conservative guy, didn't like Obama at all, wasn't thrilled that I was working for him. So we would get into it at family holidays. But I thought, on that moment, he loved Boston. He's very proud of his city. If Obama could connect with someone like my uncle, in that moment, then that would be a good use of that time. And so I kind of worked on that speech with him in mind. Thinking, what would resonate with someone like my uncle? We're going to keep all the politics out of it. We're not going to do anything that turn people off. And when the speech was over, I got a very unexpected call from my uncle telling me that he had watched the speech and that he thought it was a very fine speech. And then he hung up. That was about as much he was ever going to say about Barack Obama. But in those moments, I think we should always be looking for what are those things that allow us to really connect emotionally with our audience and what's going to resonate with them. And I think I think sometimes people get caught up in their stump speeches, and they just kind of go and they give the same speech everywhere they go, and they miss opportunities to really sort of deeply connect with an audience.
I don't know if that call from your uncle Dan was as important as the first recognition from Obama that you shared, but perhaps also quite
It's
an
up there.
important piece of feedback. And there's another question from again from Loderway, which is how much time, for example, maybe weekly, did Obama take to practice?
So in terms of by the time I joined him, he was already president, so he'd already been giving speeches for many years. He was very good because he practiced. But by the time he became president, he had a lot going on. So he, for the most part, did not rehearse his speeches at that point. Uh, the difference would be for say like a State of the Union speech. They would set up a teleprompter. He'd go in. I talk about this in the book. I fortunately was never part of those sessions because I don't think he enjoyed them very much because he had a gaggle of staff picking apart every word, picking apart every line, telling him how he should deliver it better. So for the most part, no. But even for the really big ones, and I think that's a great lesson. I mean, no matter how good you are, no matter how good you think you are, it's still always good to practice out loud, and that's especially important for the us mortals. Where I still watch videos. I did a presentation the other day, and it's like, oh gosh, so many ums and ahs and filler words, and really didn't think I did that many, and I guess I did. But those aren't destroy a speech, but you always have an opportunity to get better. So even as president, he practiced sometimes.
You do say, Terry, that in the book that the best predictor of whether or not your talk will be successful is not what happens when you are there delivering the talk, but it's the preparation that goes into that talk, even before you go there and deliver it. Now, this is not just rehearsing. You talk about the 50-25-25 rule again that we can talk about it later. But also there's another question from Mary Jane. Was Obama ever afraid of his life or the lives of his family because of something that he stood for? And did he have to adapt a speech because of this? How did he manage to deal with this challenge?
Well, a president has a lot more security than the rest of us do. So I don't ever recall a moment where he expressed that. Michelle Obama has spoken very publicly about her concerns for their daughters, as especially as they went to school, as they traveled around the city, especially towards the end of the administration, where the political rhetoric in this country really just went over the top and has stayed over the top. So she has spoken about that, about her concerns. But as far as changing a speech or because of that, I don't know of a specific case. But so I guess related to that is he did it with every speech have to make a choice about how sharp to be, right? How and we all do, and this is what I talk about in the book as well. Is like we get to decide whether we are confrontational or reaching out to people, whether we're trying to be divisive or we're trying to bring people together. We're trying to inflame a situation or calm it. That's true whether when we get up to speak in our families, our companies, our neighborhoods, when we post online. This is a choice we all have to make. And so I think I definitely saw him making that choice throughout his presidency where, he was always thinking about, how sharp to be. Does he want to throw an elbow today? Or given the moment we're in, is it a time for more, conciliatory rhetoric? And I think that's especially in the United States right now, given everything we're going through, that's something that I hope everybody thinks about. And I lay out in the book all sorts of different ways that we can do. I think it's very, and I do these posts on LinkedIn sometimes, and how we all need to speak with more civility. And the first thing someone does a comment is, "Yeah, you know who needs to do that?" And then they like list off 5 other people who they hate who need to talk more civility. I'm like, well, that may be true, but your post here is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Where we're not taking ownership of our own language. And there are things I'm sure I've said and posted that in retrospect should have, I could have toned down a little bit. We're in such a moment where everyone wants to lash out and accuse, and there's plenty of blame to go around. So this book is so much an appeal for civility, and I try to lay out concrete ways that we can all do that in our lives.
One of the things that we have in common, Terry, is that we both love the idea of letting our voice be a force for good, letting a
Oh yeah, I've
client's
seen that
voice.
somewhere.
Yeah, you've seen it somewhere. And now I mentioned this because we have a question from Jesse Walker, and just for you to know, Jesse is the co-founder of No Planet B, which is a company that with the right values. I'm in love with people like Jesse, purpose-driven entrepreneurs. And the question is not about that, but it was just to set the scene. And Jesse's asking, how did Obama start an idea for a speech?
Yeah, so I showed you that picture where we're up in the Oval Office, and we were really lucky that I think everyone around the president recognized that his ability to communicate clearly and effectively was central to his leadership. I mean, it's central to all of our leadership, of course, but some speechwriters have to fight to see the president. They fight to get time with him. We never did. We were blessed to have moments like that. So, a week or 2 or 3 before a big speech, we'd go up and have those conversations with him. And it was wonderful because it wasn't, 100 staff. It was just the speechwriters and the speaker. And he often started, I talk about this in the book as well. He started with a question I think all of us can ask whenever, before we ever write a word, before we ever get consumed by our research, just back it way up. And he would ask us, what's the story we're trying to tell here? And that doesn't mean what's the story we're trying to make up and manipulate and hoodwink people. It's what's the just simple, basic story we want the audience to remember. The audience can't remember 100 things. They can't remember 10 things. And so one of the things I recommend in the book is that you ask yourself that before you give a speech, before you ever do all this work. Try to boil your idea down to one sentence. In one sentence, what is this presentation about? What is this speech about? And to this day, I will sometimes write it down if I'm working on a speech, whether it's for me or for someone else, and I'll actually print it out and I'll put it out on the wall. Because hours from now, days from now, weeks from now, as I'm deep into this production and writing, I find myself writing a story, making a point, and I look over and I'm like, oh man, that has nothing to do with that one sentence, that one core idea. I have drifted, I have digressed. It's really, really helpful. And I find that I've worked with clients where they have, 100 slide deck because they've spent weeks building this beautiful deck. And you ask the question, what is this presentation about? And everyone sort of just looks sheepishly at their feet in the room. No one really can distill it. So that's a problem. That's a real problem if you cannot articulate your core idea. Because if you can't, your audience can't. So I walk through ways that folks can do this in the book, and that's how he would often start it. And what is the one big idea of the speech, and that it's not cliche. I work with a lot of organizations. Like our big idea is that we need public-private partnerships for this. I'm like, oh my God, please, no, that's not interesting. That's been talked about for 30 years. That is not new or fresh or interesting. Be different, be unexpected, especially if you're on a panel or you're one of multiple speakers. It's the whole thing. Say what only you can say. You're going to be completely forgotten if you say what everyone else is saying. So you have an opportunity here to be different, be original, be bold, say something. Don't just. And I think, my God, I mean, politicians do this all the time, and they wonder why they don't break through because they're not saying anything interesting or new. I mean, you can like a Barack Obama or not like him. I think the reason I think people reacted so strongly to that first speech it was only 17 minutes because I think a lot of people said, man, I've never heard someone talk like this before. At the time, it was new and different and bold and interesting and fresh. Um, that's the opportunity that all of us have
Yeah.
whenever we get whatever we're talking about.
We've got, and I love this, we've got so many questions here, and I know already that most likely we won't be able to go through all the questions, but this is great. I had an idea of, I had thought about some questions that I wanted to ask you. I won't have an opportunity to ask my questions either. We do have a question from someone at THSP, an organization we've worked with. That's an interesting one. I don't know if you can think of something, Terry, but the question is, what's the best line you've ever written? And which line do you wish you had written?
Right. Well, actually, the first thing I was going to say, it looks like we've got like almost 100 people on this, which is amazing. Before we all jump off, if it's appropriate, those who want to keep their camera on, it would be awesome to get just kind of a group screenshot of all of us smiling faces for those who want to do it. I'd love to be able to share it. So if you're on and willing to stay on for a minute, I'd love to be able to do that. Um, I'm always reluctant to talk about specific lines because they are ultimately the president's words, right? Like we can write something ultimately, but he doesn't have to say any of it. People, I think it's one thing people get wrong about speechwriting. What's it like for your words to come out of his mouth? Well, that's not how we see it. Um, but there were, I go back to that Boston speech where it was very much a story. It was the story, even though it was a tragedy, it was a story that only he could tell because he brought a lot of his personal connections to the city into it. I'm very, there's a lot of stuff in that speech that I'm thrilled that he was comfortable saying because I think it meant a lot to people. Um, Oh, in terms of the best lines. I mean, to be honest with you, the best lines are the lines that he. I wish, are the lines he came up with himself. He had this. He was reported to have said once that he's a better speechwriter than his speechwriters, and that was like, oh, like it hurt, but it was also true. You think of probably if you have a favorite Barack Obama speech, it's probably one of those ones that he wrote out himself in longhand. I mean, he's just next level. The big speech of the convention that made him a national figure. He points out he wrote himself before he ever had speechwriters. But then one of my favorite lines that he ever said, and I'm going to get it wrong, so apologies, but it's something to the effect of, I think it was during his first campaign, he said, I'm not asking you to believe in my ability to bring change. I'm asking you to believe in yours. And I think that really captured everything that he was about. We can't just put it on our political leaders to fix everything that's wrong in this country, especially when it comes to the divisive political rhetoric. I think of that line every time. Every few months, it seems like we go through this thing in the United States. We're like, oh my God, where's Barack Obama? Why is Barack Obama not speaking up? Like, oh my, the country's going to hell, and he's not doing it. The guy was president for 8 years. And I mean, at some point, the next generation has to step up, and we can't be looking for sort of the leaders of the past to save us. And so his line to me always was the charge that all of us need to stand up and work for the country that we believe in and the world that we believe in.
It's no surprise here that we've got so many questions about Barack Obama. There's another one here from Domi. Did he feel stressed before public appearances? And if not, what emotions did he experience instead?
Yeah, he told me that by the time he became president, he generally did not get stressed giving a speech because he knew he could do it. He knew it was a strength, and again, he put a lot of thought into, and he wasn't just getting up there. By the time he got to the podium, he had done a tremendous amount of planning and thinking and outlining, and all the things I talk about in the book. So he felt ready, and it actually goes to a quote that I share in the book at the end. How do you know if your speech worked? How do you know if your presentation worked? And he has this great line where he says, when it all comes together, the preparation and the feeling that you're in the moment, all of that work comes together. There was a moment though that I think captured the dichotomy. That again, going back to that famous 2004 speech, it's been widely reported that he was very confident that day, and he's going into he'd written this thing out, practiced it a ton, read it aloud a lot. He was feeling like, I think the quote is, he's feeling like LeBron James. He's gonna go. He just felt it. He knew it. He was like, I'm ready. I'm gonna go out there. I'm just gonna like this is gonna be a slam dunk. He felt good about it. Um, and he also admitted, less reported, that he kind of felt a little nervous. Of course he did. How could he not? He probably knew and he said, "Wow, this could either make my career or break my career." So yeah, and I think that's a great lesson for all of us too. I mean, you can be confident and still be anxious. I still get anxious before presentations. I've been doing this now for a few years, but that's good. I think that's actually a good sign. I share a lot in the book. If you're not getting nervous or anxious or fired up a little bit, it might be because you're not taking it that seriously. It's a pretty normal reaction to get a little anxious before a presentation. And if you never feel that way, I wonder if, maybe you're a little bit too complacent about what's going on here. We do have a responsibility to kind of bring it, just like an athlete, like a performer, bring the energy. We don't take time. Here we all are taking an hour out of our busy lives to come together and to share and to learn. If I'm half asleep, you're not, you're not getting your money's worth. I know you didn't pay for this, but you're not getting your money's worth, your time's worth. So I think as a speaker, like we owe something to our audience and they deserve our best. And so if getting a little anxious is probably a good sign. I mean, Steph Curry talks about, guy's amazing, right? He still gets anxious before a game. It's how he prepares. That's his body getting ready to deliver a world-class performance. So
Absolutely normal emotion. And perhaps we've got time for a couple of other
oh
questions.
yeah, yeah.
There's a great one from again Mary Jane. What's an example? Can you think of an example, Terry, of something that either went wrong or perhaps just not according to the plan, and how did you turn it around?
Well, I'll give you. I'm not sure how relevant this is for your life because none of us, most of us, don't use teleprompters, but it's catastrophe in the making. So I wrote a speech where the president was going to celebrate and honor an American soldier, service member who had given their life in Iraq. I wrote the speech. Everybody fact check it. It got loaded up. He was giving the speech on the other side of the country. I wasn't on the trip, so I'm back in Washington, D.C., eating pizza with my family at a restaurant. I get this frantic text from our fact checkers. It said, we got it wrong. The service member was not killed in Iraq. He was killed in Afghanistan. And my heart sunk and I got sick to my stomach because the family was going to be right there in the front row. So can you imagine that you have lost your son? President's going to honor him, and the incompetent staff at the White House can't even get the story straight. I mean, very embarrassing and very it would have been a real disaster. So I frantically text the team. I said, "Folks, I'm not on the trip. I'm back here in D.C. He's got the wrong thing in the speech." They wrote, "It's too late. He's already speaking." And at that point, like, well, me losing my job is probably not the worst thing that happened because this family is about to be hurt tremendously. I mean, I can't even imagine. Fortunately, the president was using a teleprompter. And so one of our staffers who was there ran across backstage, ran over to the teleprompter. And as the president was speaking, because that two monitors backstage, popped open the speech, went to the back of the speech, fixed the word, closed it back up. And then a minute or so later, the speech moved up and the president delivered it correctly. I don't even think he knew, what the change had been made was. So that was something that I'm telling you about it, I started to get like my chest tightens up because there were a lot of moments like that where we would on the verge of getting something wrong. Fortunately, we were able to fix it. Most of us don't have the benefit of a teleprompter, but again, a great reminder. Facts do matter. Being right does matter, and I know facts are not in facts and accuracy aren't always treated with the greatest respect these days, but it still matters for all of us. Our credibility depends on us getting our facts right. And so I have a whole section in the book about all the different ways we can make sure we're speaking the truth. And anyway, that's one of many stories where we came really close to tragedy.
Thank you, Terry. And let's close with this question from Margot. She says, and I think that's very relevant in today's world. What do you say to people who say that speech writers will become redundant because of artificial intelligence?
Right. Yeah, no, I have strong feelings about this. Um, yeah, well, listen, if an AI bot can write a speech that is just like the speech that you human would have created, then your speeches probably aren't very good, and maybe you should be made redundant. Uh, but that's not, in my view, what audiences want. What audiences want, first of all, audiences are humans. And when you are a speaker getting up to speak to another group of human beings, again, back to what we were talking about there, they want a human connection. They want a human experience. They want to feel something. They want to know what's in your heart, what's in your soul, what you can bring, the stories and experiences that only you can bring. And there is no bot in the world that can do that right now. And I don't think there ever will be because, um, there was no bot in the world that would know that my story about my Uncle Dan until I told it. Um, Audiences don't want scripts written by machines. We're not there just to give information and data points. We're there to forge a human connection. And so, as a thought partner, as a researcher, sure, use it. I use AI for this. Outline, help me come up with an outline, help me come up with a topic, a structure, help me find quotes, check them because it makes a lot of stuff up. Uh, hey, this is too long. Cut 500 words. As a thought partner, it's great. It's an incredible tool. But when the moment comes to actually put down words on paper, the words that you're going to speak that should be from your mind, your heart, your soul, that's the part where we need to put the machines aside. And I hope that as AI takes over more and more and more of our lives, that there will be even more hunger for moments like this where we are having a conversation as human beings. Uh, the stories, the experiences, the perspectives, the emotions that we bring as a speaker is what sets us apart. It's what gives us power. It's what makes us unique. There's 8 billion people in the world. Nobody else has your stories, your voice, your experiences, your perspective. I beg people not to give their voice over to a bot.
And you do have in the book some mini sections of how to use AI as a thought partner rather
Right.
than replacing the entire process.
Right.
And okay, Terry, thank you very much again. Thanks to everyone for the questions. I know, and I'm sorry we didn't have time to go through all the questions, but thank you again for being proactive about it. Before we do the screenshot, let me leave everyone with a few free resources for those who want to learn more. We're going to include a few links in the chat. Now, the first link you'll see is a link to a virtual goodie bag, which is a collection of, again, free resources, advice, promotions from both our supporting partners and also Terry himself, some of the resources that he mentioned on his website. Also, there's a link to the Confident Presenter Scorecard, which is an online tool that you can use to very quickly assess your current public speaking skills. It's free. It just takes a few minutes. You need to answer a few questions, and then you get a score from 0 to 100%. And the scorecard also identifies opportunities for improvement for you. Check it out. And then the third link is our web class. In addition to these special events, we also run a regular web class on all things public speaking, presentation skills. Again, it's free, it's 45 minutes, short, impactful. We've got 2 dates coming up, one October the 1st and then October the 15th. If you've never attended the web class, I'd love to see you there. Feel free to check out our upcoming sessions. And also, one final thing, and then we'll do the screenshot. Although this is not for everyone, this is only for either established business owners or business leaders who are motivated to take their presentation skills to a higher level, and either for themselves or for those who want to develop a team of confident communicators. And for those who are ready to take action to make it happen. If that's you, then I would be very happy to offer a complimentary consultation, which is a 1 hour conversation with me to see if there's a fit between what you may be looking for in this area and what we have to offer. And regardless of whether or not there's a good fit, I can promise you that if you attend the consultation, you'll walk away with much greater clarity on how you and all your teams, your colleagues can become more effective presenters. And you also walk away with a free copy of my book, Confident Presenter, just for agreeing to have a chat. Now, if you are interested, feel free. I'm going to type it here in the chat. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about this opportunity, feel free to type 1-to-1 in the chat, either in the public chat or in the private chat if you prefer. If you type 1-to-1, you're not committing to anything. You're just telling me that you'd like to learn a little bit more about what the consultation is about. I'll get in touch. I'll give you more information. And then if together we agree that it makes sense to go ahead, then we'll go ahead and find a time to speak. And that's it. Thanks to everyone again for all your questions, for your participation. Phil, thank you very much for your support behind the scenes. Terry, of course, for your time, for sharing your insights. Phil, are you ready? Shall we do, for those who want to do it, of course, you don't have to, but we've got lots of people here. If you want to stay for a moment, we're going to do a nice gallery view screenshot. And Phil, let me know when you're ready. Maybe a thumbs up, and then I'll do 1, 2, 3, and then let's smile. Let's make it fun. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Done, Phil? Fantastic. Perfect. Terry, thank you very much again. You said that you will be in London in 2026, maybe March, and I'm just putting it out there. We'll do it just live here. Nothing is confirmed, of course, but because you mentioned it, if there's a way to collaborate in person, perhaps arrange an in-person event in London where we can do something similar or something new, that would be fantastic.
Great. Thanks so much for your opportunity. I love the discussion. Great questions, and just good luck to all of you. This is hard. Public speaking, presenting, getting up there in front of a room of people is hard. It brings up a lot of emotions. I try to address that in the book. It's not just about writing it out well. It's not just about delivering it well. It's about making sure are in the right mindset emotionally. And so I hope it's useful to you, and best of luck in all your work.
Thanks again. All the best, everyone. Take care. Bye bye.